All right. Hi, everybody. I guess we're starting a little late, but there are a lot of you out there, so I'm going to say that's enough. And sorry to the people who are late. Hi, my name is Andrew Baer.
I'm Bobby.
Sandell. And this is Declarative Pipelines in Jenkins. So a little bit about the two of us. We're both longtime contributors to Jenkins. We met at the first Jenkins conference back in 2011. We've both worked extensively on declarative pipelines and immense numbers of other things. And we are both engineers at CloudBees working on making Jenkins better for all of you and ourselves every day. So who here is familiar with pipeline? Oh, that's nice. That's nice. And who here is using pipeline? Oh, that's very nice. So yeah, quick in case anybody didn't know, pipeline as code. Define your build along with your project code, committed in your source control. Scripted pipeline is where pipeline started. It lets you use nearly the full power of Groovy to script your pipeline. It's gotten even closer lately. While declarative pipeline provides a more structured and opinionated syntax. So we can do things like validation, a visual editor, which you may have seen the demo of at the community booth yesterday during lunch. So first, I'm going to talk for a little bit about the past, present, and future of declarative pipelines before Bobby shows off some of the new functionality that's coming soon. So a year ago, we announced declarative pipelines. We hit 1.0 in February of 2017, and the first Blue Ocean pipeline editor beta came out around the same time. So yay, 1.0. Since then, there's been one minor release, one major, 1.1, with some new features, including more complex options for when conditions for determining whether to actually execute a stage, and a libraries directive for including shared libraries without having to use the @library annotation fund. There is a support for a Kubernetes agent within the Kubernetes pipeline plugin, or is it the Kubernetes plugin? Honestly, I don't remember right now. I believe it's Kubernetes plugin, so that you can specify an agent running in Kubernetes the same way you could a Docker agent or running on a label. So it's a great example of how a lot of aspects of declarative pipelines are actually extension points in Jenkins that can get further implementations from other plugins. So it's not all me and Bobby, hopefully. We don't scale infinitely. And in addition to that 1.1 release, there have been a lot of minor releases, a lot of bug fixes, including bug fixes to the bug fixes that I regressed a few times. And a lot of polish to the user experience, just streamlining some syntax issues here and there, making things work a little better with the editor, round tripping, and continuously more test coverage. I'm really proud of the test coverage on this plugin, which does not mean it doesn't have bugs, but I do my best to make sure we don't have the same bug twice. Coming soon, within the next couple weeks, maybe next week, maybe the week after, we're finishing up testing right now, will be Declarative Pipelines 1.2. The most noteworthy features and changes, in addition to the normal cavalcade of minor bug fixes, are much improved syntax for parallelization of stages, so you don't just have to do kind of awkward stage, steps, parallel, node, whatever. So I'll show you that in just a minute. A complete rewrite of the parser on the back end, which is my favorite part, and hopefully most of you will never care, but it solves a lot of problems with environment variable resolution, when expressions, all kinds of little gotchas that we had, causing, again, weird regressions, issues with Windows environment variables. That's all been rationalized, so I think things are a lot more stable and also will take like half a second less time per build. So if you're really that particular about your build times. With this release, when you're on newer versions of Jenkins, like 2.60 and later, you'll be able to have your SCM provided environment variables like that you might have been used to back in Freestyle, like git commit or git branch. Those will be automatically added to your environment now, which we're really happy about and think will be really helpful. You don't have to be on that newer version of Jenkins to install Declarative 1.2, but you do need to be on that newer version to take advantage of that functionality. And when conditions that to determine stage execution that use the SCM changelog. So you can say, if this file changed in this build, do this. Or if this file changed, don't do that, don't do that. Bobby will talk about that one in more detail a little bit later. So, can you guys see that at all, or is that's actually a pretty decent size. I mean, it's bad, but. So this was the syntax that we had for parallel before now. It's kind of yucky. You can't actually take advantage of things like post for a stage when you've got stuff in parallel on different nodes. You can't conditionally execute part of the parallel, well, one of the branches of parallel, but not the others, et cetera. It's not declarative native. It doesn't feel smoothly integrated in declarative. It's not taking advantage of the power that declarative really gives us when it comes to managing stages. So now, I know it doesn't look hugely different. I needed examples that could fit on a slide. Now we have a better syntax where for every stage, you can specify either steps or parallel. And then within those stages, within parallel, you can then provide a list of stages that will all run at the same time. And you can do all the stuff you're used to in terms of specifying a normal declarative stage. You can do agent, you can do when, you can do environment, you can do tools, you can do post, and it will all work. The one caveat is you can't nest infinitely. You can only go that deep. Maybe down the road, we may allow more complicated nesting of parallels, but we couldn't find, it didn't feel like there was an elegant solution to that, and I think this will cover a lot of the use cases out there. So this is in 1.2, it works, it's really solid, I think, and I hope, and support for it in the pipeline editor will be coming out at the same time. So yeah, like I said, a stage can either have parallel or steps, but not both. You can't have a stage that contains parallel stages and does stuff itself. The top level stage there is a container. You can't nest. And a stage that contains parallel, a parent for parallel stages, agent and tools have no meaning for it. So rather than letting you get confused by, wait, but I put an agent here, why isn't it relevant? We're rejecting that at validation. So just a few gotchas, but this will all be in the docs that end up on Jenkins.io like normal. So, like I said, the parser rewrite. So this was my baby. You don't actually care, I just wanted to brag a little. These were some weird problems here.
And I had to code review it.
Yeah, he did. I owe him about 18,000 gallons of beer. But not all at once, because then I'd no longer have a code reviewer. Really, really big improvements in how we handle the declaration of variables in environment, and how we handle parsing and evaluating when expressions. That also open a lot of other doors for us down the road in terms of a more maintainable approach to translating that pipeline syntax into something that actually is happening at runtime. So I think it's going to really help us cut down on those me-induced regressions and allow us to have a more maintainable and more stable behavior going forward. So again, change logs and when. So yeah, this is a cool feature that Bobby added recently. There are two new when conditions to go with the any of, all of, not, branch, expression, and environment. Now we have changelog and change set. So changelog will allow you to take a look at the commit log messages for your build in relation to the previous build, and decide whether or not to execute that stage based on whether you match a regular expression pattern within that changelog. While change set looks at the file paths and allows you to say, did I see a file that was changed under this, matching this ant style path expression. There are a couple caveats to this. Jenkins has to have already run a checkout before it can do this for reasonably obvious reasons, I hope. By default, unless you tell it otherwise, the first time that a declarative pipeline gets on an agent, it will do an automatic checkout. You don't have to explicitly do a checkout. So chances are pretty good that you don't have to think about that, but we felt we should probably mention it just so we can say I told you so later, or not have to say it. The Git plugin can be a little annoying. It doesn't collect the changelog for the first build of a branch, which makes sense since there was no previous build. But that's also the case for pull requests. So the first build of a pull request as of now does not have a changelog. We have some ideas on that front, but nothing implemented yet. But it is something we are going to pursue and do our best to solve, because that's obviously a really useful scenario for this. Is, wait, does this pull request touch this chunk of code? And the logic is a little rigid. For example, now I don't remember what I was saying here.
I'll show that later.
Okay,
in my
yeah.
demo.
So there's some logic stuff. He'll show. So to fix some of the hassles, particularly with PRs, for GitHub and Bitbucket pull requests currently, and this is an extension point, so other SCM branch sources like Perforce or SVN or GitLab can implement this themselves. When we're giving you the changelog for the second or third or fourth build of a pull request, we're actually going to give you the full changelog for the entire history of the pull request, so that you, because generally you care about what's happened throughout the history of the pull request for conditionality like that, not just, hey, this changed one line in one file because it was actually fixing a typo kind of thing. You still want to be testing the entire rest of the pull request before that change. This can lead to some false positives, like a commit in build number 2 that you then reverted in commit number 3. That first commit will still show up in the changelog. But I mean, this is a new feature. We're looking forward to seeing how you guys end up using this in the real world. And if you've got critiques, complaints, compliments, etc., we'd love to hear them, as always. So, Declarative 1.2 beta is available right now. It's 1.2 beta 4 is available in the Experimental Update Center. If you don't know what I mean by the Experimental Update Center, that's cool. You probably don't want to be running betas. But I'm very confident in this beta. We just didn't want to do a release until we had the editor update for parallel stages done, and until we'd done some pretty thorough testing internally at CloudBees, so that we're really confident that we're not going to break your existing stuff, because I hate when I do that. But if you want to give it a try, that'd be great. We'd love to hear your feedback, love to hear any issues, and yeah. Now, that's great that we got stuff coming in the next couple of weeks, but you also probably want to know where we're going with Declarative down the road. So I have no time frame for any of this. I will make no promises. It's also possible some of these things won't necessarily happen. We'll find out, but hopefully they'll happen. So among the things that we are looking at, that's on our roadmap that we plan to execute, are the ability to restart a declarative pipeline run from a failed stage. Say, like, oh, what, it failed there, but I know that was flaky. Can I just resume from 2/3 of the way through the build? That's something that is a pain to do in scripted pipeline unless you give money to CloudBees and use the CloudBees checkpoints pipeline plugin. Give us money. But with declarative, we can do a kind of simpler approach because we've got a more rigid structure. Who here is using shared libraries? Great. Shared libraries, I think, are the way to really, especially when you're using declarative, the way to really extend your power to get, especially for a shared services team or a build team, to provide custom workflow, custom behavior to your developers without them having to copy paste a lot of things. one shortcoming that I have found with shared library steps currently, with declarative, with the editor, with the snippetizer, is they don't show up in the editor and the snippetizer because they're not actually steps. And there's no validation of parameter names, types, et cetera, the goodness that declarative provides for steps. That's something we're working on fixing and coming up with a way for when you write your shared library steps, you can specify some metadata or some flags that will result in it being available from the editor and you being able to use the snippetizer to drop down, there's the step, fill in the UI, hey look, there's the pipeline syntax I need to copy and paste, and to be able to do the parameter validation, which is one of my favorite little bits of declarative. Yes?
Is it likely to show up in the replay?
Is it likely to show up in the replay?
So when you replay
Yeah.
declarative and you're using a shared library,
Yes.
you don't see them.
Oh, so you're saying when you replay a declarative pipeline, the library, the at library, or the library directive doesn't show up?
Well, the library directive shows up, but what the steps in the library don't show up.
Oh, the steps in the library don't show up. Let's talk about that. I'm not entirely sure. That may be a bug. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, well, we'll talk about that later. Sorry, just want to. It's my stage. I only get this once a year. And right now, the editor covers probably what the overwhelming majority of declarative pipelines use, but it doesn't have the full support for the full syntax, just due to time, due to limited resources, due to having other things our bosses tell us to do. We're going to keep pushing that. We're going to keep working to get that full support for the declarative syntax within the editor so that you can, if you want, use the editor for everything. Who here has used matrix jobs in Jenkins? All right, who here actually likes aspects of matrix jobs? No, I mean, they're a pain to use because it's freestyle land and all that. But matrix jobs allow you to say, here's some matrix axes, run this same thing, but with different combinations. So like run it on Windows, but with this version of some other dependency, and this user or something like that, or security configured that way. It's a great way when you've got to test something in a whole bunch of different platforms, a whole bunch of different configurations, but it's the same thing running in each place. Pipeline has not been, you can do that in Pipeline, but it's not elegant enough. The reporting aspects of it aren't great. Like if you do, if you get JUnit test results or any test results twice in a pipeline, it actually all gets mashed up into a single test report right now. So we've been working on the building blocks to get what I've been calling matrix equivalency, to be able to have more granular understanding of status by branches, to be able to have test reports that are by stage, not just here's one test report, whichever's the newest one with that name wins. And as those pieces come together, we're going to add a syntactic sugar in declarative for matrix. It's something that a couple friends of mine have been harassing me for, so I need to do it or they will hurt me. But I think it'll be useful for other people who have to do a lot of different combinations of running the same thing. So now we will switch to Bobby, and he's going to demo / showcase some of the things that are coming in declarative 1.2.
Okay. Hello. Hello, hello. Am I audible? No? Okay. Good.
Yay.
Yay. Okay, so it was meant to be a demo, but since we don't want to defy the demo gods, I put it on all slides. So it's more of a showcase. Okay, so just some expectations here from my side. This is not a continuous delivery best practices thing. What I've actually done is that I've modeled the workflow and the problems based on the cool features I want to show you. So it's a sort of a made-up scenario, but yeah. It's not, I've tried to keep it simple, but we're not splashing around in the kiddie pool either. So that's sort of where I've been trying to land this one. So if you've gone to any of the Let's Build a CD Pipeline workshop earlier this week, I think they used the same sample app that I'm using. I've just massaged it a bit into Declarative 1.2 land. It's a pretty little good application to try and build because it has Java and Maven in the back end. It's got some Node.js and some gulp things in the front end. There are performance tests automatically made here for it, and it's packaged as a Docker container. So we have a bunch of different technologies to play around with here. This is my made-up workflow for how this application is going to be developed and delivered. Again, not a best practices thing. This is me inventing the problem based on the solution. So we have the master branch. That's sort of, we're aiming to have that always deliverable. We branch out feature branches out of there. We work on those, and then we merge those back. We have a couple of different release lines where we cherry pick or merge or whatever we do. So that's sort of where I'm inventing this one. Again, problem based on a solution.
Hand wave.
So this is usually where I sort of stand back and try to plan out what we are going to do. So we will need to build this thing, of course. We want to run some static analysis. Then we have the different tests that we want to run, the unit test, the performance test, the front-end tests. And let's make it CD, so let's deploy it as well. That's nice. So let's put some constraints on ourselves just for fun. So let's pretend our build resources are limited. I mean, I only have this one laptop. And the developers here are impatient, so they want feedback quickly on their pull requests or when they're pushing to the feature branches. So we only want to run, or I only want to run, a limited set of tests for the feature branches, and then once they land on master, let's make sure to run a bit more rigorously. We need to handle the deployment credentials in some secure way, of course, and then we are cowards, so we are only going to deploy to production if a human says that it's okay to deploy to production. These are generated tests, after all. So let's refine this plan. So let's start by building the backend. Then we'll test that backend. And since that is all Maven, in the test phase, we could run find bugs at the same time, because that's easy to do. Then we'll run more tests, but only if we are on the master branch or the release branch. And we'll run these in parallel, the front end and the performance tests. But the front end tests would be nice to run if there are changes in the UI as well. So if it is a feature branch and there's changes in the UI, we should, of course, run the front end test as well. Then the stage to deploy to staging, and then to deploy to production. Staging we'll do for master and release, and production we'll do only on release. So the zoomed out version, we have our stages. I've added 2 stages from my previous slide. I'll touch more on those when we get to them. So let's start to zoom and enhance on the checkout stage. Nothing particularly strange here, I guess. We can run this on any agent. I want to do a checkout, basically. But as Andrew said before, Declarative will actually do a checkout for us if we don't tell it to do it, if we don't tell it otherwise. But I want to do that here. Let's say that the app is really big. It takes a long time. We don't want to hammer the SEM, so let's hammer Jenkins instead. So we'll check out the SEM, and then we'll stash the contents of the workspace. Let's skip the Git database and just call that workspace, include everything else. But since Declarative actually does a checkout by default, we need to tell Declarative to not do that. So that's the option here. The skip default checkout in the option tells Declarative to not do that. We will take care of this ourselves in the first stage here. Also, I'm putting agent none on the global pipeline level. Since I'm going to do some parallel later on, I'm going to wait for human input, so I don't want to hog too many resources. So we'll control the agent on a per stage set here. Moving on to building the back end. So running in a Docker image. Maybe I should pause and try to motivate why this is a good thing. So let's pretend that in my laptop company here, the shared services guys, they don't want to, I mean, this is an app that is using, 5, 6 different technologies. We don't want to make Snowflake slaves, or agents. They changed name in Jenkins too. There are tools that we can use, and you can use tool installers to install, but that will pollute the agents themselves. So by just having agents that can run Docker, then we can use Docker images to create or running containers that have the tools that we want to use. So that's why we're doing it here. In this case, we only need the standard Maven 3 Alpine Docker image to run in, mounting the m.2 directory so that we don't have to download the internet for every single build we do. And then the first thing to do is to unstash the workspace that we stashed before. Run Maven, we'll skip the test for now, do that in a later stage, and then we take the build result and stash that as well as a separate stash that we can use later on. Notice here that I'm not specifying a label for the agent to run on. That's sort of a bit of a hidden feature maybe, because we have been bad at documenting it, that I wanted to talk about. So if sort of not all agents are capable of running Docker, you would need to specify that label to make sure that your build is actually running on an agent that has Docker in order to run Docker. But there is actually a setting for any folder, and even on globally in Jenkins, you can define what default label to use when you're using a Docker agent. So this is the configuration page for the multi-branch pipeline itself. You can specify the default label there. You can specify a default registry to use. So, and what this means is that Jenkins file authors don't need to worry their pretty little heads about how Jenkins is configured by the admins. So they only need to say, I want to run on Docker, and then it's configured behind the scenes, so you don't need to have too much stuff in your Jenkins file. Okay, testing the back end. Same thing again. We run Maven, we unstash the workspace, unstash the build results, run the tests, and run find bugs at the same time. These are the post stages. Basically, you don't need the unstable here at this, but I wanted to put it there. It actually fit on the slide. But so that you can see that you can actually, it's an either or here. Either if we're successful or unstable, we'll collect those reports. So the test more. This is where I've crammed in all the new stuff in 1.2 in one stage here. So here is the new parallel syntax that Andrew talked about. We'll have 2 stages in here, the front end and the performance. So let's zoom and enhance on front end. So here, when do we want to run the front end test? Well, we want to run this when any of the following things apply. So either we are on a branch called master, or we are on a branch called release something, or if there is anything beneath the web app directory that is part of the change set. That's when we want to run this. And for the agent, I actually have a custom Docker file in the repository in the docker/gulp directory that is sort of a Node.js 8.4 or whatever that also installs gulp on it. So I specify that with the Docker file agent type here. And so that I have the tools that I actually need. There wasn't any available in the registry. So I can build my own Docker file and run that here. And the steps are pretty simple. Unstash the workspace, unstash the build results from previously, and then run the front-end steps. Since I'm running this on a brand new, if you're wondering what the dot there in the first, that's the SH equivalent of source. Yeah. The performance tests, these we only want to run if we're either on master or release. And we can use the standard Maven here as well as we used before. Unstash the workspace, unstash the war, and run the Gatling tests. Unfortunately, here I couldn't collect the Gatling at the end, but we can pretend, right? The deploy stage. Here we have some fun stuff. So I'm picking, here we can run on any agent, basically. That's because I happen to know that we only have Linux agents in this cluster. But I should probably say agent label Linux or something. We'll pick the staging credentials that are stored in Jenkins for us, put that in the environment variable called staging auth. That will actually create 3 different variables for us: staging auth user, staging auth password, and staging auth. And we'll run the staging if we're either on master or release. The steps are somewhat simple. Unstash the war file, run the deploy script to deploy to staging. You might be wondering here where this release or rel version comes from. I'll show you that right after this. Of course, we would need some kind of post thing here if we were really doing CD, like notify and hit chat or send an email or Slack or whatever it is. So there's rel version thingy here. So I'm going to need this rel version in both the staging and the actual production release. So up on top in the global environment, I can do some groovy things. So Declarative Pipeline is actually trying really hard to hinder you from shooting yourself in the foot. But with groovy strings, we can aim as hard as we can and maybe get a toe off or something. So, so basically here I'm looking at the environment variable branch name. If that contains release, we'll drop anything below the last dash, add a dot, and then add the build number. So we will have something like I showed you before. We had release-1, release-2. It will either be a 1.56 or a 2.56 or whatever. If we're not on that, since I know that we're either running on master or release, I know that we will be on master in that case. So I just make a pretend version. I'm calling that m dot something. So this will be available to all stages since we're putting it on top, so we don't need to do that calculation more times. I then realized that for the feature branches, the developers might want the actual war file downloaded in case something went wrong. They might want to do some analysis or something. So I've added this archive stage to archive the build artifacts. So this is basically when we're not running on the master or a release branch, meaning a feature branch in my scenario. We only need to unstash the build results and then call the archive artifacts steps here. And we'll fingerprint that to make sure that we can keep track on it in case it turns up in production somewhere. And then just to be safe, allow empty archive means that it won't fail if the war file isn't there. Then we maybe should have pushed to Docker registry or something as well with the other artifacts. Moving on to production push. A bit strange here, maybe. We don't want to run on any agent at all. And I'll show you that next. Sort of the environment, we take the production credential this time instead. This time we only want to run when we are on the release branch. And the steps here is that we start with the input step. We ask should we fire the missiles? And that will actually pause the pipeline where it is and wait for human input. No resources will be used. We haven't declared to run on an agent, which means that we're actually safe here. We can pause safely and just wait. And then once we have an, okay, fire the missiles, that's when we allocate a node on the Linux label, unstash the war, run the deploy script on production. And of course, we should have, so if successful, notify Slack or whatever, but that didn't fit on the slide. Also, you might not want to sort of pause here forever, so I've added a 15-minute timeout around this. Yeah. And so let me sort of show you this hopefully working example. Just to show you that it actually works. So this is how the pipeline looks in Blue Ocean. I'm actually looking on a build of the master branch here. You can see that it deployed to staging, and then it skipped the archive stage. It skipped deployed to production, and it's done. Run these two in parallel. Going back, looking at a release branch, for example, you can see this is gray. That means that it actually aborted. So it deployed to staging, it skipped the archive stage, and then it actually failed here. It waited on interactive input and timed out. So that's why we are gray here, because I was tired, so I didn't fire the missiles. And just a feature branch. We skipped deployed to staging, we did archive, we skipped deployed to production, and we were done. If you have any questions of this, I'll be in the community booth later on, in case we don't have time for questions.
All right. Mike, please. Thank you. All right, I'm back. So yeah, there's documentation on all of this up on jenkins.io. There's a full URL, but you don't actually need that. Just remember jenkins.io, and then there's a documentation link and then things. We've got some examples up in the pipeline examples repo in the Jenkins CI org on GitHub. And I really should have edited that slide. I meant to link to some examples. I will get some links to some real-world examples in here before we upload this slide deck, so that when you can go download the slide deck from Jenkins World later, there will actually be some links here, and I won't feel quite so stupid. Questions? You first.
So, can I do everything in declarative as I would in scripted?
Question is, can I do everything in declarative that I could in scripted? Yes and no. Well, yeah, but now I'll answer why. Yes, if you use shared libraries. No, if you don't. We restrict the syntax in declarative, both for comprehensibility and so we can have that structure, so we can do validation, we can do round tripping. And so like you can't set variables in a steps block and then reset them later. Can't do an if or a for loop or something like that. You can do those things inside a script block within steps. But like if you declare a variable there, it's not going to be available later on in the pipeline.
And you won't get any of the nice validation and
So if you
things like
if you do something that doesn't work there, I won't actually be able to tell you earlier.
linting is what we call it.
Linting, yes, linting. But you can get a lot of that power even better by using shared libraries, by running your more complicated scripted logic into steps that you put in your vars directory in shared libraries, because you can invoke those happily in declarative.
So a shared library would be built in what, in Ruby?
Yeah, shared libraries are written in scripted pipeline, the traditional pipeline.
Okay.
Yep. So, yes.
Are there plans for supporting the upstream, downstream capabilities that the Maven project has?
Are there plans for supporting the upstream, downstream linking of projects like you have with the, I think I'm legally obligated to call it evil project type, Maven. There's some work along that line with the with Maven step provided by the Pipeline Maven plugin. So that's probably the place to look if you're Maven specific. But nothing concrete to do that in a more general sense. But we're aware that there needs to be some more usability in terms of connecting, automatically connecting projects based on dependencies. You way back there. Any plans to support promotions? Yeah, we need to come up with an answer there, don't we?
It's a bit tricky since promotions is, I mean, when you say pipeline, you say stages and they should run automated. The promotion, yeah, it's not really a clear fit with how to do promotions.
Yeah, we haven't found a conceptual model for it yet, but it is something that comes up fairly often. Obviously, there's ways you can jury-rig something that is in the same ballpark, but yeah, something that's more elegant is on the roadmap, and as soon as one of us comes up with an idea for it, you've been patient, so you back there with the hat.
I have two questions.
Two.
You mentioned adding support for metadata on shared libraries.
Yes.
Everyone will be aware. Have you considered producing plugins for popular IDEs so that desktop development of shared libraries can also be aware of their functions?
All right, first question. I mentioned the metadata on shared library steps so that they'd be visible in the editor, in the snippetizer, et cetera. Question was whether we've considered writing plugins for some certain popular IDEs that could be aware of that. Yeah, I don't know how, though. If anyone here is, say, an author of Eclipse plugins or NetBeans plugins or LKIPS, IntelliJ, or Visual Studio Code, who knows? We do have APIs that you can reach out to using the traditional Jenkins XML API or JSON API to get that information, to query, to find what steps there are, et cetera. But I don't know how to write those IDE plugins, so I haven't done it. But we would love to see contributions on that front. Now, you had a follow-up.
Totally different question. You can restart pipelines in the middle with the checkpoints enterprise plugin. You mentioned some support for restarting and resuming pipelines in declarative here. What about if I want to just start in the middle instead of resuming?
Interesting question. The question is, so we've got the ability with checkpoints, proprietary feature you should all be paying CloudBees for, to resume a failed pipeline, and we're going to work on adding something similar in declarative. The question is the ability to start a pipeline partway through. Probably you could do something with when conditions and parameters along those lines, where it's if this parameter is set, don't run the first few stages, something like that. That's probably the best approach. Yes?
Kind of a related question. Can you call a pipeline from another pipeline?
Can you call a pipeline from another pipeline? Yes, build, the build step. It's a little meta in that the build step builds the builds, but yes.
Because I had kind of a similar question to his, is could I just pick one stage of my pipeline and say, I just want to run that stage. I don't want to run the other 9.
Yeah. Now
Maybe if I separated into different pipelines, then we'll just call it.
Yeah, that's always a possibility to just separate things out and call out to another thing. Now I'm going back to this side of the room. You, sir.
So when he talks about writing tests for scripts,
Writing tests for scripts. There's a talk you should be going to. Let me check the exact time because I have it on my schedule. There is a library that's been written recently, a Jenkins pipeline unit, that is intended for exactly that. So I'm incredibly happy they wrote it because we never got around to it. You can also do stuff that I know people have done with kind of having a dummy project that when you've got a common set of pipelines that you're using across a lot of projects, you could have a dummy project that you run through that pipeline. That talk is Jenkins Pipeline Unit, Test Your Continuous Delivery Pipeline at 3:45. I'm not sure what room it's in.
probably here.
Probably here? Oh, well, we'll find out. It's somewhere. It's in a room. And now it is 11:32, so I'm going to wrap it up. But thank you all very much. And don't forget to give us feedback on the talk in the app. And if you've got more questions, you can find Bobby or I wandering around the floor or on IRC or on the Jenkins mailing list. And if you have issues, open JIRAs. I like it when you open JIRA, especially if you give me reproduction cases. So thank you all very much. Enjoy the rest of the conference.